Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, the ship that is the topic of discussion is a most interesting case. This ship was once considered to be pretty much godlike in the eyes of the community. But man, if you take her into battle today, oh lord, it has not aged well at all. She's been nerfed quite a bit, and the evolution of high tier gameplay has not been kind to her at all. And yes, what you're watching in the background is the ship we're talking about today, and that is the Kremlin. Now, if you were around in update 8.4 when the Kremlin was first introduced, you probably saw tons of videos talking about how cracked the Kremlin was. And truly, in her 8.4 version, she was quite strong. Quite a little bit too strong, in my opinion. Now, of course, with the Kremlin being released and being, a godly ship, Soviet bias was, of course, one of the main accusations thrown against wargaming. But unlike a lot of ships, the Kremlin was nerfed pretty quickly if you look at her changelog. I mean, if you look at like the Conqueror and the Thunderer and other ships that have come out in very, very strong, essentially broken states, it takes almost a full patch cycle to get those ships nerfed. But the Kremlin only had to wait 5 patches and she was nerfed, and nerfed in a pretty big way. So what is the Kremlin, and why was she so good when she was released? So the Kremlin is the tier 10 tech line Soviet battleship, and the whole thing about the Soviet battleships is that they are incredibly strong tankers incredibly strong bow tankers, I should say. If you get to any Soviet ship's flat broadside, they're going to have a very, very bad time, right? Which is really funny too. Players were making accusations that the Kremlin couldn't even be killed in like any situation, and I think I made like a 2 or 3 minute compilation of me just driving by the Kremlins with GKs and just erasing them from their side because their citadels are exposed. Yes, it has a little slant to it, but like once you get to like 15 kilometers in, you can citadel them with anything with decent AP quite easily. Anyway, so the Soviet battleships, they are great bow tankers. They have this weird dispersion gimmick where essentially their dispersion is better at close range and worse at longer range than their same tier counterparts. And that's supposed to encourage pushing up, because the Russian server, I should say, is very much all about brawling when they were part of Warships and not their own thing now. And given some of the ships they've been added in over there, Lesta is full tilt going into that. But anyway, and because of that, it's like, oh, okay, so they want to make those Russian battleships, ships that are meant to push in, right? And they are designed to do that. Again, great bow tankers, better dispersion at closer range, and they have great armor to deal with HE spam. On top of that, too, they get the special Soviet damage con that is very quick in its cooldown time, but it is limited. And the ships are so tanky and have so much HP that they do get 1 less heal than their same tier counterparts because of that. So the Kremlin also has 457mm guns, and the guns do have the Soviet bias shell ballistics. They don't have a lot of air drag, and they are quite punchy when you do get hit by them. So all that in one package, a ship with 9 18-inch guns, incredibly tanky, has the short cooldown damage con, has the Soviet heal, and then of course if you have Kutuzov, you get the what's it called, last man standing, or whatever it's called, heal, where once you get your ship down to 10% HP, he pops it and you get a free heal at the end. So yeah, you put that all together, and that's a pretty powerful package. Now, the Kremlin's gun ballistics and gun characteristics, I should say, when she was released, were pretty spooky. Her Sigma was 1.9, which is pretty good by tier 10 standards. And when you have a battleship, anything around 1.9 or 2 is considered great by tier 10 standards. We can get into like the 1.8s at tier 10. That's kind of like, right. And a lot of tier 10 ships have, like 12 guns too, right, or more than that, or they have very large caliber guns. But the Kremlins are 9.457, which means they cannot overmatch 32 millimeters of armor, but they're still big and have quite the punch. And her AP shell alpha back in the day when she was released was 15,500, which is that's quite a bit of alpha. Now, one of the first things they did to the Kremlin is that they nerfed that right out of the gate in 8.9. So 5 patches later, they nerfed the Kremlin's AP by 1,000. So that's a pretty big hit to a battleship's AP. That's a pretty big hit to anyone's AP, right? To their AP alpha. But they also nerfed the HE by 100 for some reason. It's like, okay. And they decreased the fire chance from 48 to 45%. Okay, not too many people use the HE in the Kremlin because the AP is so good, but okay, they nerfed that. And then they just went freaking ham on the ship in the next 4 updates in a row. Like, they broke out the nerf bat, and they didn't stop swinging. So, in update 9.0, they nerfed all of her AA mounts' HP by half. Just erased half of the AA's health. Why? Because the Kremlin had, and still does have, pretty darn good AA, but before the other nerfs, it had really good AA, so they just half the HP of the AA mounts. Then, in update 9.1, they nerfed the Sigma of the ship from 1.9 to 1.85, so it went from having better-ish Sigma to now it's just like, oh, it's okay. And then in 9.2, they nerfed it again, and decrease the Sigma from 1.85 to 1.8. So now that's just like, yeah. And then in 9.3, they nerfed her AA again. They nerfed the continuous damage amount. They nerfed the flak burst. They nerfed the explosion radius of the flak burst as well. And then in 9.5, they nerfed the ship's AA again with the continuous damage, and they nerfed the flak burst yet again. And that's where they finally stopped nerfing the ship. So for half of an entire, full patch cycle, the ship was getting nerfed. Now, despite all that, the ship was still pretty decent back in those times. But we aren't in, 9.5 anymore. We're in, 13.1 now. And, this ship has not aged well at all. So, of course, when you have a ship like the Kremlin that's geared towards close-in engagement to the point to where its dispersion is absolutely terrible past 13 kilometers, that's not going to do too well in today's World of Warships. And when compared to other close-range battleships of today's World of Warships, even like the GK, like we were talking about earlier in the week, the Kremlin fares even worse. Why? Because ships like the GK have secondaries to where you can get that passive damage income, and you get all these secondaries bolted to the side of your ship with the improved range and the improved accuracy and such, to where when you are within your secondary range, at least you're getting consistent damage from your secondary guns. The Kremlin doesn't have that. Its secondary guns are not great at all. It's only got like 16 of them. And of course, they don't have like the German HE pens. They don't have the range or anything like that. So it's all really up to your main battery guns. And what's incredibly frustrating about the guns today is that they don't perform exactly like advertised in a lot of instances, especially from playing the ship for the past hour and a half, trying to get a decent background game. I've had so many cases where I've been like sub 12 kilometers from the target, and for whatever reason, the Sigma, the dispersion is still just absolutely terrible. I've missed a bow in Satsuma with all but one shell from 10 kilometers in the Kremlin. 10 kilometers at tier 10 and one shell hit out of the 6 in the forward guns. That's not good at all. And I've even missed from closer ranges. There's been a couple of instances, and this is what's really frustrating, where there's been like a destroyer 5 kilometers away from me. Called him broadside. Get the forward guns on him. Fire. Dispersion's garbage. from 5 kilometers. Now, that's one of the strengths about the Kremlin, well, supposedly, of course. If you do get that close to a destroyer, and you have, these massive 457mm guns, yeah, like most battleships, of course, they don't have time to load in HE because, they have a 30-second reload time. By the time you swap out your AP for your HE, the DD is just going to skedaddle away, right? But the Kremlin, because it's got these massive guns with such a big alpha, even if you use the AP and blast them with that, 14,500 alpha, that translates with a 10% conversion to, 1,450 damage to the destroyer per shell. You hit them with 6 shells, then, yeah, that's like half of their HP, right? But you got to hit them with 6 shells, right? And that didn't happen, and I had multiple shots at him, and then the dispersion was just terrible from 5 kilometers, right? That's just what, why isn't this working like it's supposed to? Again, it's because of the 1.8 sigma, because sigma is the value that determines the chance, if you will, for your shells to actually have a tight dispersion pattern. And then, dispersion itself is the amount of distance those shells can move around in that pattern. So the lower the sigma, the lower the chance you have of having a tight pattern. So even though you do push up in your Kremlin, you do push up in a meta that doesn't want you to push up, you still might not get the dispersion that you're supposed to be getting because of sigma. Yeah, that sucks. So, you got half your ship burned down. You're out of position. Well, I say you're out of position because you're not in the back line anymore. There's submarines now, super ships, super CVs, all just beating the ever-living crap out of you. Kremlin is a great punching bag. I don't think I went a match without getting at least 2 million potential, with the exception of probably the one big match you're watching right now, because it was a ruffle stomp, and it's the only match that lasted long enough for me to have, for a full background video for a commentary like this. But yeah, because everyone wants to shoot you because you're a massive target, and while, yes, the armor is pretty well suited to deal with HE spam, you're still going to get set on fire, right? And yeah, you do have the damage cons, but they do run out, right? So you want to hold on to them and, try to min-max your damage cons with your heal and such. And you do have Kucherov and such, so you can stick around for quite some time, but it's still not like it used to be, right? Where you could just be this immovable object battle tanking for years. You can't really do that in randoms anymore. So, yeah, it's so weird seeing this ship that was considered to be godly and broken and, the epitome of Soviet bias in the game, and now it's just like miserable to play in randoms. It still does have its place in like ranked and clan battles and competitive and such, because in a more team-oriented mode where you're on comms with your teammates and your teammates are pushing up and stuff and giving you support, yeah, you can stick a Kremlin on an island and it just won't die, right? If you got a good player in it that can angle and balance their damage cons with their hills and such, right? In that case, it is still quite good. But just for random battles, unless you get a match to where you can push up and take advantage of the dispersion, and the dispersion does actually cooperate with you, yeah, it does still perform very well. But getting to those matches is just painful, right? And yeah, it is funny to use your 4-2 guns and there's a broadside cruiser in front of you from 6 kilometers and you just, snap them out of existence. But in the 2 hours that I played to get you guys this footage, again, it happened one time because a Neptune sat in a smoke and I managed to creep up to him without him realizing I was, I think, that close to him. I blapped him, yeah. And I got to blap the Zal. You're probably watching the background right now, running to the map border. Because again, I was able to sneak up on him like that. But, and again, that game was a raffle stomp too, right? So it's just like, how the mighty have fallen with the Kremlin. And again, it's funny too, because again, the ship was supposed to be, Soviet bias and kind of like the Soviet bias boogeyman for the game. And now it's just like, I really don't want to play it again in randoms, or anything that's not like airship escort or like convoys, to where, it's a game that's centered around getting close to the target and getting close to the objective, and you have to get close to the objective to win, because it's just so painful to play nowadays. Again, like clan battles and ranked and such, yeah, it's a bit better there because of the smaller format and, again, the more team-focused mindset. But, yeah, nah. And, again, it's not like the Kremlin's the only ship that came out that was overpowered as hell. And it took them, well, again, the Kremlin got nerfed and then didn't stop getting nerfed for half a patch cycle. But, like, yeah, like the Louisiana recently, how godly the reticle was on it. And it took them, you know, until after the clan battle season that it ruined to nerf that, right. But, yeah. So, guys, this is my 2 cents on the Kremlin, taking a look back at her and her adventure in World of Warships. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're going to 75,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday and wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.